songs of Mother Goddess and the Father in the tree.
Hello, my lovelies. Thank you for joining me tonight. This is Paisley Wild, and we're off adventuring into the spaces between. We are being broadcast live on Truth Frequency Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live, and on YouTube. Now, if you are listening in on YouTube, make sure you do hit the like, that thumbs up, and subscribe button, and you'll know when we are going to be live again. And you can also check us out on the podcast, which is any place that iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify might be found. And then, no matter how you are hearing me, make sure you stop and say hello. So, hi. And thank you for joining me here on my spiritual journey. And I hope that you will want to continue learning with me. So if you do want to support the show, I do have the Etsy store as www.etsy.com/Monarch Mountain Indeed, or Monarch Mountain Studio, blah. Mountain is MTN. And the website is the spaces between .live, or you can find me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/the spaces between. Call line is live tonight, so if you want to call in and give me your 3 cents, absolutely do so. That number is 213-233-3998, or if you're across the pond in the UK, it is 44203-393-2871. And looks like the chat room is filling up, so hello, everyone. I see Black Tree. Hi, Julia. Cameron. Deb, Gemini, Nessie. Hi, Brent, Paranormal Portal. Renee, and Weird Desk. Hello. And, yeah. So, excuse me. I'm still coughing just a little bit. Ugh, I hate this time of year. It seems like I'm allergic to cold weather. Maybe I am. I don't know. Anyways, I was out and about today. Met, oh, hey, Naysay. Some friends for coffee here at the local coffee shop in Ponderay. And then went out adventuring. So Sandpoint has two kind of, or a primary, excuse me, esoteric shop called 0 Point Crystals. And they're downtown. And so went there and got to wander around. They've got a bunch of natural stones, big, beastie rocks, and they're beautiful. They're awesome. And that was a good time. I hadn't been in there before. And then they also, in the Cedar Street Bridge, there is a little place called Essential Vibes. It's run by Luna and Cedar, and that was just a good place to go too. It was fun. And just, rocks and crystals and things you can touch. And oh, well, Nacy may drop in. Thanks, Cam. Messing me up. Just rocks and crystals and all sorts of fun stuff to kind of check out. So I got a little bit of sage and some amethyst and a lovely piece of onyx about the size of my hand, which is pretty freaking awesome. Not that I needed it, but you never know. You never know. I might, because I like bigger rocks. Like this is my piece of quartz. I don't know, on YouTube World, it's about the size of the palm of my hand, and it's kind of my worry stone. So I tend to fidget with it as I'm reading or doing stuff. And yeah, it was a good time. Myself and Minnie Paisley and Black Tree just kind of got out and about and wandered around and had a girls' day. And sometimes you just got to do that. Seriously, you just gotta. Because sometimes you really do just need to get out of the house. And I know that today being Black Friday, a lot of folks were out shopping and stuff. And I didn't really want to go shopping because, honestly, I don't like shopping. Especially on Black Friday, there's a lot of insanity, and I just don't want to deal with it. But, kind of wandering through some of the local shops and having coffee and hanging out with friends, that I do like. So, yes, it was a good day. Hi, Sonia. And then, so yeah, it was just good to get out. Um, I did get a little piece of Palo Santo, which I don't normally have, just because resourcing it, there's some issues with resourcing Palo Santo, so just wanted to get a little piece so I'd have some in case I needed it, because you know, occasionally I do, you know, help folks with cleansings or rituals and that kind of stuff, and making sure I have all the tools that I need. You know how it goes. It's kind of like seeing candles on sale, even though you don't really need the candles, but when they're 25 cents a piece, you have to buy them. So, um, tonight I really, I had a plan, but I didn't have a plan, and it was just kind of, what am I going to talk about today? And other than I'm cold, my studio is cold today. I've got a lap blanket and a heat pack and a sweater. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I got to thinking, you know, one of those questions that we get often, I think, in the pagan world is, you know, what is paganism? What does it mean to be a pagan? What does that really, really mean? And often, you know, we may have an answer or several answers, but you know, it varies, I think, from one month to the next, even what the definitions of really, really, what does it all mean? Um, because I know as we're in different places on our path, things mean different things. Seriously. So I figured I'd just start off with how to again, because it's good to just touch base because we have new listeners all the time, and just kind of, you know, the basics periodically, and then we'll see where it goes. I've got other material and stuff to talk about. So, what is paganism? I think I've talked about that a couple times. It's just really a religion that is not Christian, Judaic, Islamic, and that also works with the energies of the earth. It's generally an earth-centered religion or a reconstruction of a pre-Judaic or pre-Christian faith or tradition, a path in its basics. What kind of pagan religions are there? There's several. Even, you know, depending on where you look for a list, there's going to be lots of lists, and not everybody's going to agree. There's Wicca, which is pretty common. Asatru, the Hellenic Reconstructionism, Druidry, Slavic paganism, Celtic witchcraft, although witchcraft isn't always a religion. There's the Nordic. There's the first tribes, first peoples, the Native Americans, and the Hindu. There's South American tribes. So yeah, basically anything that isn't considered a descendant or part of the Abrahamic faiths is generally considered a pagan religion, generally speaking. Do pagans believe in God? Yes and no. um, and it basically some believe in gods and some don't, and some believe in multiple deities and some don't. So basically, there's the atheism or atheistic pagans, which means there is not really a supreme god or goddesses. Agnosticism is a belief that there is a god or personal deity or supernatural being that cannot be either proved or disproved. Animism is the belief that everything in nature has a spirit or is a part of the divine force that created life. Pantheism, that everything exists and is a part of God. Panentheism, it's a belief that God is a part of everything and yet stands apart as well, transcending the natural world. Deism, there's more than one God that is a personal God, but is not involved in the universe at the present time, so it varies. Monotheism, there's only one God. Henotheism, or enotheism, the worship of one particular God, but there's a belief that there's more than one God, but you're only worshiping one. Polytheism, there's more than one God, and there's And then hard polytheism, that there's a plurality of gods that are worshipped, and excluding the idea that gods are all one god, or that goddesses are all one goddess, or that they're all just different faces or aspects of the same supreme being. So there's a lot of variety there, and I think a lot of pagans fall in and amongst that whole spectrum somewhere. Um, into different emphases, I suppose. That may not be a word, but it is now. Do all pagans do magic? Nope. Not all of them do. Some do, some don't. It's okay. Are all pagans religious, or are they just spiritual? Is there a difference? I'm kind of glossing over this because we talk about this often. So religion is generally a group practice that is aimed at interacting with the divine to empower ourselves to be better people. But spirituality is generally considered an individual practice aimed at interacting with the divine in order to empower the individual to be a better person. So kind of the difference there. Religions are generally a group of people. Spirituality is generally an individual. Are pagans earth-based? Yes, some are. Some are not. It fluctuates a little bit between the person and what their path is or tradition, because not all traditions are the same. And actually the biggest one I hear often, probably the most, is how do I know if I'm pagan? This one isn't actually the easiest question to answer. Honestly, how do you know that you're not? I mean, seriously. You can talk to the various practitioners. You can, with the different traditions, you can do your own research. You can, kind of. Actually, I do recommend you do your own research. I say it often. I'm serious. Do your own research. Don't just follow. Most pagans are not very good followers, I've noticed. Some are, but generally speaking, we're pretty individualized, and we're not just following along with the crowd. We're, generally speaking, we're all pretty individual. So, yeah, it's a kind of a big thing. So, before you say yes, I am a pagan, or convert to being paganism from a different religion, do your research. Talk to a variety of people, whether they are priests, priestesses, spiritual leaders, any of those. So, excuse me. Side note on that one, and I need to write something up. And this has actually been kind of marinating in the back of my brain, off and on for a while. For this past week. So I, as you guys know, and I've mentioned it once or twice before, I am part of the 30 plus Pagans and Witches Amino, which is a social media group. And similar to Facebook, but yet so very not. And we had a person come into one of the chat rooms. He was a new member, had just joined. And he wanted to have a reading done, like a tarot card reading, which we don't generally just say, hey, ask for tarot card readings. There's you ask someone first if that's okay, and there's a process to it. We actually have guidelines and rules and everything. Anyways, so I was just conversing with him in the chat room. I was like, hey, so why are you asking? And his question was, well, I want to know if my life is going to get better. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of a it's not that it isn't a legit question, because I know that we've all been in a place where we're frustrated with the way things are going, and we want to know if life is going to get better, or is it going to continue being the same just mess that it is when we're in the middle of it. And it can be just doggone frustrating, because, yeah, we want to know if things are going to get better. And I had asked him, it's like, have you had a tarot reading before or anything like that? And he goes, well, I prayed about it. It's like, okay, well, who'd you pray to? He goes, well, what do you mean? It's like, which God did you pray to? He goes, well, I guess I prayed to the Christian God. It's like, okay. Um, so are you a Christian? He goes, well, I don't know. I don't think so. It's like, well, why would you pray to a God that you don't follow and only barely acknowledge? Because there's a lot more conversation in there. And so it kind of was I found it vexed me a bit that here's this person who is just putting questions and demands out there into the universe without really understanding who he was talking to or how he was asking about it. And it just kind of boggled my mind that he just put this demand out into the world. He demanded that his life get better. And without really putting in any of the work necessarily, or even knowing what deity he was talking to, and it was just a bizarre conversation. And I spent probably 30-40 minutes talking to him via chat. It's like, hey, listen, so if you don't believe in a particular deity, why would you pray to them? He's like, well, that does kind of make sense. Yeah. And if you don't know what tradition or faith that you're going to follow, then, or are following, would you need to kind of figure out what you're doing first before you petition a particular deity for anything. And you need to kind of do some meditation and think about it and kind of try to figure it out. And so, at the end of it, he's like, those are really good ideas. Those are really good points. I'm going to try meditating now. And it was just really bizarre that this person thought that he could just throw out a prayer and it would be answered, period, without specifying which deity he's praying to or petitioning, without offering any kind of thank you or acknowledging a relationship or anything like that. So yeah, it was quite bizarre. So yes, before you petition a deity, you should probably get to know the deity, because it'd be like asking Cupid to kill someone. Cupid's generally the considered a deity for love and affection and all that kind of thing. So if that's the case, then why would you ask him to kill someone, for instance? Or would you go to Hades and say, hey, I want you to bring, or to create life? Or, those are two very, very extreme pieces, or statements. It's really stop and think about whom you're speaking to and asking a question of, or petitioning, before you just throw something out there and say, hey, I want this to happen because I asked for it. There needs to be more of a relationship out there. So anyways, now that just kind of on my soapbox stomping around and having a temper tantrum, there was a few face palms as I'm trying to talk to this person and communicate with them. You can't just demand something of the universe without putting yourself out there. You also have to do the work yourself a little bit. I mean, seriously. We've all heard the story of the guy that, and this isn't a very pagan story, it's a very Christian one, but seriously, this guy is in hurricane country and he was told to evacuate. And he says, no, God will take care of me. I'm fine right here in my home. And it rains, the floods come, and rescuers go by in a boat and they're like, hey, you need to leave. He's like, no, God will take care of me. And he waves them on, and the water keeps coming up. So he climbs up on the roof of his house, and a helicopter comes to rescue him, and he's like, no, God will take care of me. And the water keeps coming up, and it destroys his house, and it starts floating away. And another, rescue boat comes by, and they're like, hey, let us help you get out of the water. He's like, no, God will take care of me. But in the process, he ends up dying, drowning, and everything, goes to heaven, and He's sitting at the pearly gates and talking to God, and he's like, God, why didn't you save me? And God's like, what are you talking about? I sent, these people to help you. I sent those people to help you. You were trying to get you. I sent you the warning to be beforehand, to even evacuate. So yes, I did all these things to help you, but you refused to take advantage of any of them. So, what my point is there is yes, ask, petition, absolutely. But also remember that you do have to do some work. Things do not just happen to you, it's not just an accident. Work is involved. There has to be an investment of self. So, remember to invest in yourself and put yourself out there. So, anyways, um, other questions I hear is, you know, um, I'm brand new to being a pagan. Where do I start? What do I do? How do I do this? Um, Generally speaking, I recommend reading some books, talking to some spiritual leaders. So speaking of the guy that was just put the prayer out there, I told him like, hey, if you're really gonna pray to the Christian God, go talk to a priest, go to a church, and invest in your relationship with the Christian God. Not a very pagan statement, I suppose, but at the same point, it's a very spiritual statement. If you want the results, you have to do the work, but you also have to develop that relationship. So, if you're going to be a pagan and follow a paganistic path of some sort, talk to, do your research, look into the different deities that are out there, the different traditions, what kind of fiction do you read? That often will help you kind of identify which, pantheon you might want to look into. What fascinates you? Are you fascinated by Egyptian history? Well, maybe you need to be looking at the Egyptian pantheon, for instance. So, what is it that's really interesting you, in your day-to-day life? That's what you should study a little bit more and find out, what your pagan path might be. And there's all sorts of groups on Facebook now. The Amino has a lot of groups and information. There's a new one called Pagan Space. They're trying to pick up the pieces as Witchbox kind of steps out of the pagan picture. So that's a thing. And just do your research. Seriously, talk to a spiritual leader of some sort, and make sure this is the path that you want to be on. Read some books. I personally like The Inner Temple of Witchcraft by Christopher Penjack as a beginner. Seriously, it's a place to start, but you're not going to stop there. Get some notebooks because you're going to be taking notes. Excuse me. And notes are good because they will help you on your path. And in a couple years or time down the road, you're going to look back and be like, oh, that's what that is. And that's why I did it. So it's good for you. Yes, our actions do hold a lot of power, Sonia. Work. Work for what you manifest, yes. So Sonia in chat says, most people don't get that tarot cards specifically tell you where you were, where you are, and where you might go, and our actions hold more power than the cards. So it's a possibility is what when people do a reading like tarot, for instance, or runes or anything like that, is a possibility that could happen. It's not a for sure 100% thing. It's a possibility. And if you don't want the result that might be in that card reading, take the steps to make different choices to get a different result. I mean, all it is giving you an awareness or knowledge about your specific situation. Let's see. Next one here. What's the difference between a pagan, Wiccan, and witch? They are not synonymous. They do not all mean the same thing. Paganism is generally an umbrella term to describe pagan religions and Wicca and all of those things. Wicca is actually one of the religions. You can be pagan and Wicca, or you could be Wicca. I mean, they're not interchangeable. They're often very specific. You can be a pagan and a witch, or you could be a witch and not a pagan. There are Christian witches, by the way. So they're not synonymous, and you don't have to be all of them at the same time. They are different. So just like that, it is bottom of the hour. It's break time. So if you do want to call in, the lines are open, by the way. It's 213-233-3998. Or if you'd rather, email is absolutely fine. That is wildpaisley@gmail.com. That's WILDEPAISLEY@gmail.com. And then I guess I'll be right back, and we're going to keep on talking about these common questions. See you in a bit.
Father in the tree.
Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and we are off adventuring in the spaces between and just kind of chatting about some of the randomness, the questions that we get. And you never know, there are a few of them. It's kind of an adventure. Now, some of the questions are really awesome, and they really throw a lot of insight, and it makes it makes you feel good to talk to them, talk to the folks, because they're like, hey, yeah, this is my question. You give them an answer like, oh, I totally get it, and this, and this. And some questions are like, derp, seriously, people. um, Speaking of 30 plus amino, like I was doing before the show or the break, um, one of my moderators got a private message, and the guy's like, hey, so what is a pagan? And they're like, well, why did you join if you don't know what a pagan is? Well, he goes, honestly, I was looking for a mistress. I thought this was a role-playing site. And I was like, seriously, no. There is a lot of misconception, I think, about paganism and witchcraft in our society right now. A lot of people really think that today's trends with witchcraft and paganism, and how it's so accepted, and how there are so many out there right now, that a lot of them are just playing. It's a game. It's just a fad. And, for some of them it is. Just like I was talking with Bella Luna last week. Yeah, some of them it is a fad. But some of them it's legit. It's real. They really feel these things. And, don't knock it. So, but generally speaking, no, this is a legitimate thing. I feel that, yes, I am 100% pagan and a legitimate witch. Period. Now, I've done some things that just you can't really explain otherwise. I mean, seriously. And I know for those of you who are listening, a lot of you are already on this path as well. You've seen some things, you've experienced some things, and you know that this is a very legitimate path. This is real. It's not fiction. And it's not a fad thing. It's not a social movement. So, yeah. It's been, it's just frustrating and interesting at the same point, at the same time. So, anyways. Another question that I hear often, getting back to where I was, is the reed, R-E-D-E, reed. Do all pagans follow the reed? And the answer to that is no. Generally, there's a do no harm thought process, or something to that effect. But, the reed itself is a set of ethics that is generally associated with Wiccans. And not all Wiccans follow the reed the same way. And, excuse me. So, you can't just say, if you're in a chat group or you're talking to someone, oh, well, that violates the reed. Well, what happens if someone doesn't follow the reed? It's like, oh, you're going to hell because you don't follow Christ. Seriously, it's kind of the same thing. Really, truly. There are two different religions, or several different religions, and not all pagans follow the reed. I generally feel that what you put out there is what you're going to get. Or even more so, what you're looking for is what you're going to receive. So if you're looking for the negatives out there in the world, that's absolutely what you're going to receive, and what you're going to experience. And if you're looking for the positive stuff out there, then that's what you're going to experience. So it varies, I guess, and it depends upon your tradition, what you're following. How do you find a coven or a group to practice with? This one is actually a lot harder than I thought it would be. And at the same time, it's easier. And the reason why I say that is a lot of pagans and witches today are very solitary in their practice. And in that respect, you don't need a coven or a group to work with. You really don't. You can do so much all on your own. It's not as rewarding as, working with someone or with a group of people and sharing that information and those ideas, because that is rewarding and it's awesome. So, um, when it comes to finding a group to practice with, it's hard, because in a lot of communities, like the one I'm in here in North Idaho, generally speaking, it's a pretty open-minded crowd of people. Pretty progressive, actually, for a really conservative area. And even I think a lot of our liberals would be really conservative in other places. So, um, and one of the things that we were talking about today is, yes, we can be out there as pagans, but there's still going to be an element in the community that is absolutely 100% against anything that is non-Christian. And that's going to be everywhere. So as you're looking for a group to practice with, be cautious. There's all sorts of sites online. If you have a local esoteric shop, often they will have postings of or when people are going to be getting together. And I would generally recommend meeting in public first. Seriously. And Facebook has a lot of groups. I know Amino has a lot of groups. The the pagan space, they're starting to develop and have a lot of groups listed. So, it all, do your research. Don't just assume that someone says, "Oh, hey, we're pagans, we're getting together." Not all pagan groups are created equal. So just go into it with your eyes open and practice safe internet when you're looking for a pagan group or coven. And ask questions and make sure that the group you're talking to is going, their ethics and how they believe is going to at least partially match up to how you believe in your ethics. Seriously. Now, also on that note, a lot of covens and circles, moots, groves, etc., have some age requirements when you're looking to join. And this is partially to protect them because there's a lot of negativity out there, potential negativity for, leading the lambs astray, if you will. And, don't stress about it too much. A lot of them will still have, public groups, even though Blackstreet and I were kind of talking about formalizing our group and having an official circle, because the circle's all encompassing, so we're thinking circle. There's still probably going to be a public get together at some point, about once a month, for coffee and just chat and talk and just kind of see what's out there. So, answer questions, because I think that public meeting is important, and to kind of keep that PR campaign on the positive side, because there's a lot of negativity, especially if you look at anything that Hollywood does. They are so almost anti-witchcraft and anti-pagan that you need to really be aware of that and make sure you are doing as much as you can to put yourself out there positively as a positive force in the community rather than something that's potentially negative. So when it comes to deities, for instance, I know I hear a lot of people ask, what gods do you follow, or goddess, or that kind of thing. And how do you know? Excuse me. So some people believe in the deities as archetypes rather than actual deities, and that's okay. I don't feel that way, but I know a lot do, and that's okay. It is their path. It is their tradition. It is their journey, and it's their own thing, and that's good. It's good to have your own thing and not just be a sheeple. So do your research. What are your beliefs in deities, and how do you, if you are going to worship a god or goddess, how do you pick one? Well, As I mentioned earlier, just read about them. Read about the different pantheons. Do you have, if you were in history class in high school or social studies or what have you, is there a particular time that really was fascinating to you more than others? Egypt is fascinating, Greeks, Romans, those are all just incredibly interesting. The Norse, the Nordic path, the Celts, any of those, what is really super appealing to you? If you watch the History Channel, which shows do you like the most? Maybe instead of following deities, you follow aliens. I don't know. But seriously, what is it that interests you? That should give you a clue as to what to research more. And then, read those, books on those particular pantheons. Search. Google's got a lot of great information, or online in general, not necessarily just Google. Be aware as you're doing your research that a lot of them are there's a lot of fiction out there. So just go into it with an open mind. This is why having your journal is a really good thing. Write down your notes. What deities do you have interested in? What calls to you the most about that particular deity? Meditate on those deities, and often, as you're honoring a deity, you'll find that I'm just not clicking here. I'm not feeling that personal connection. And am I doing it wrong? No, you may not be. You probably aren't. You just may not have a very good relationship with that particular deity, because you're going to have a better relationship with a different one. Because a lot of people feel that a deity will actually choose you. And if it doesn't happen like right away, in that first 3 days of deciding you're a pagan, that's okay. It's a journey. And just like any other road trip, you really can't rush it. I mean, as much as I would love to go, warp speed ahead and get from here to North Carolina in, 2 or 3 hours, the odds of that actually happening are not bloody likely. So, don't rush it. Do your research, and don't be disappointed if you don't have that connection right away. Because some people don't even actually ever feel called by a particular deity. They feel comfortable just, with the god and goddess as an archetype rather than a specific. That's why I follow Hecate myself, but I am called by Cernunnos. So it's, one I felt compelled to follow because, shoot, I've been following Hecate for, decades now. Cernunnos has probably been there for as long. If I stop and think about it and look back at my life and some of the things that have popped up, it's like, oh, smacked my head, or derp. Those are, signs I should have picked up on. But because my eyes weren't open to the signs, I didn't see them because I was trying to walk a different path. And now looking back, it's like, oh, that's what that meant. That those aha moments are kind of fun. So yes, it has definitely been, just an interesting journey. So yes, don't feel pressured, as Bella here in YouTube says. Don't feel pressured to, find a deity, because you might not have one, and that's okay. You may just need more of the archetypes or the universe. I mean, seriously, that is okay. The energy is out there. So when you put your intent out there, make sure you're grounding yourself, put your intent out there, and then, the response will come back to you. And that's often the best way to do it. So, so yeah, there's that. So that was what I really wanted to talk about to begin with. Actually, it was one of the many things, because I have ended up, as I'm doing my search here, it's like, wow, I've got so much going on. I got to thinking, as we are kind of, into that time of the season when, the Holy King and the Oak King are often discussed, I thought maybe we would touch on them just a little bit. So, I've got a couple of different links here. So, and it's kind of interesting. I have a whole poem here that I would love to read, and I'll probably actually do the poem is a colloquy of the Oak and Holly King. I'll probably put this on Patreon, so if y'all want to find more about Patreon, it's there's a couple different tiers. The basic one is only $1, so and you get access to pretty much everything on Patreon. So I'll be putting this colloquy of the Oak and Holly King because it's just a really good one, I think. So mostly with the legend of the Oak and the Holly King is that hold on, as I'm I had a couple of pages open here, and I want to make sure I'm reading the right one. So winter solstice is coming up. It's on the 21st, and I'm planning on doing something here locally. I'm kind of excited about that. So generally, it's celebrated as the rebirth of the sun or the Oak King, and on this day, the light is reborn, and we celebrate the renewal of light of the year because the days are going to be getting stronger. But if you'll notice, we do deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la la, because it's also the Holly King's Day, because the Dark Lord is still reigning. He's the god of transformation and the one who brings us to birth new ways. So that's part of the reason why we make New Year's resolutions, because we want to shed our old ways and give way to the new. So let's see. Basically, that's it in a nutshell. But there's more to it, of course, because the symbolism basically is the horn god is also the Holly King, or considered the Holly King and the Oak King. It's two sides of the same deity, because each half rules for half a year or 6 months, and then fights for the favor of the goddess and dies. The defeated twin is not actually dead. He just withdraws for 6 months, and then returns, to have the new battle and come back for the next 6 months. So, which is part of the whole cycle of life that we have, the death and the rebirth, that we see apparent right now during the winter time, in the northern hemisphere. There's more to it, of course. Time, okay. They're basically the Holly King and the Oak King are the two sides of Cernunnos, fight for supremacy. And so when the Oak King at winter solstice can't talk, or Yule, the Oak King conquers the Holly King and then reigns until midsummer or Litha. And then once summer solstice arrives, the Holly King returns to do battle with the Old King and defeats him. And then, now depending on your tradition, the battles may happen on the equinoxes rather than on the solstices, so that the Oak King and the Holly King are strongest on the solstice rather than the equinox. So it just kind of depends on your tradition. So you've probably seen the Holly King portrayed as kind of a woodsy version of Santa Claus. He wears red, has a sprig of holly in his hair. He may be driving a team of stags. I mean, it's kind of a common theme with Christmas. And the Oak King is generally portrayed as a fertility god, and may appear as the Green Man. And the symbolism of the holly and ivy has been something around this for a really long time. Even in so King Henry VIII of England wrote in Green groweth the holly. So it's been a while. Green groweth the holly, so doth the ivy. The winter blasts blow never so high. green groweth the holly. As the holly groweth green and never changeth hue, so I am ever hath been unto my lady true. As the holly groweth green with ivy all alone, when flowers cannot be seen and greenwood leaves be gone. So basically, anybody who's been around holly, it's an evergreen, so it's always there. Um, Anyways, there's just a lot of information, and it's just part of that cycle. So the Oak King and the Holly King are going to battle it out. One's going to rule for the next 6 months, and they're going to do it again. And it's just, again, part of that turning of the wheel. Hold on, check the calls. Nope, no one's calling me. So, I don't know. I think it's fascinating. The Holly King and the Oak King is the first real legend that I talked to my daughter about, and it was really kind of funny watching her or listening to her try to explain it to her father, and she got some of the details not quite accurate, but she is only 5, so it's just she really embraces this time of year. She loves the Christmas holiday and all the symbology and the lights and the greenery and the trees and everything. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's fun. So let's see. Then the other thing I figured I'd bring up, because it was kind of something I was talking to a friend of mine about, some of the folklore things. And I'll probably just bring it up every so often, because every so often we come across folklore or things that our ancestors did that made sense to them, and like bubbles appearing in your coffee may be a sign that money is on its way. I don't know about you, but with all these frothy drinks that we get, there's a lot of bubbles, and I don't know that anybody's getting money other than the coffee shops. So, but the one that actually kind of came to mind is there's kind of a wives' tale, if you will, of putting eggshells in your coffee. It is originated back when coffee was boiled in the percolating pot over the fire, rather than today there's drips and pours and cold brew and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, it was to change the alkalinity level of the water, because the water was not always that great. But I got to thinking, what if once upon a time a kitchen witch started putting eggshells in her coffee because she used it as cascarilla, which is eggshell, basically. It's ground up eggshells used for protection. And just at the very basic, it's ground up eggshell. So what if a hearth witch or kitchen witch was putting, eggshell in their coffee for protection and just to ingest it as part of their morning rituals? And someone asked why, but because they're worried about being outed as a witch, they just said, "Oh, well, it makes my coffee taste better." And the proverbial snowball, started rolling. And here we've been adding, eggshells to coffee for calcium, or to change the pH level, or whatever scientific way that we now use eggshells for, because I know they're out there. But what if really, truly, this little bit of folklore started off because of a witch? Just random things. I drive about 45 minutes back and forth to work every day. So 45 minutes there and 45 minutes back. So random thoughts that kind of kick around in the back of my head as I'm driving down the road. Beautiful drive, but sometimes the insanity in my brain just kind of goes out there. So yeah, I'll see if I can try to come up with those random little factoids as we go. Because they're interesting, there's so much of what we do in our society today. I gotta tell you, you can't help but wonder, where did it originate? I mean, seriously, what started it? So here we are, bottom of the hour, or top of the hour, just about. We're all done. So Suzanne Ross is next on TFR. She's kind of a new gal for us, and freaking awesome. So Yeah, so stay tuned on TFR for her. If you do want to reach out to me, it's wildpaisley@gmail.com. That's WILDEPAISLEY@gmail.com. Or check out the Spaces Between.live. The Patreon is up and running. Patreon.com. The spaces or / the spaces between. Or you can check out Etsy, and that's etsy.com /shop /Monarch Mountain Studio, and Mountain is MTN. So thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. I'll be back on tomorrow night for some more randomness. I have no idea what I'm talking about tomorrow either. It'll come to me. I generally dream about something on Friday night, and it surprises me. So, anyways, thanks for joining tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. And I hope you all have a very great evening.
Ayo.